Chapter 14 of A Diamond in the Rough by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 14. The Hand of Providence. After they had got the tools and material together for their wicked project, Moses Wise and Mickey Gibbs spent the rest of the evening until close on to midnight in the kitchen of the Wise domicile playing cards. Moses was accustomed to come in and go out when he chose without question from his mother, who felt obliged to knuckle to him as he was the chief support of the family. Two of the other young Wises being employed in the screen room of the breaker at very small wages. When the clock indicated 11:45, Moses threw down the cards and suggested to Mickey that it was time to get busy. "I'm ready," replied Master Gibbs, lighting another cigarette, an example immediately followed by Moses himself as he led the way outside. He went to the woodshed and got the parcel. Then the young rascals made their way to the river by a roundabout way, whence they sneaked under the shadow of the banks till they reached Mr. Wesley's boathouse. It wasn't a hard matter to force one of the side windows, and through this opening they entered the boathouse. It took them more than an hour to accomplish their purpose, after which they got out as they had entered and closed the window tight. Then they went to their homes to dream over their expected revenge. Promptly at 3 the next day, Fred knocked on the door of the Marsh cottage and was admitted by Mrs. Marsh. "Annie is all ready and waiting for you," she said with a smile. "And I'm on time to the minute," he said, pointing at the clock. "I believe she'd have a conniption fit if you'd been 5 minutes late." "The idea, Mother! Aren't you awful?" exclaimed Annie, who entered the room at that moment, looking simply charming in her fetching summer hat and white lawn dress. "You'll be back before dark, won't you?" asked Mrs. Marsh to Fred. "Oh, yes, we expect to," answered the lad, who looked very handsome and manly in navy blue coat and trousers, cambray shirt with blue dots, and a wide leather belt and straw hat. "They're a fine-looking couple," remarked many a miner's wife, observing them as they passed along the streets toward the Susquehanna. "I shouldn't be surprised if it will be a match." Fred had the key to the boathouse. "Let me help you on board?" said the boy after they had entered. Then he opened the tall outer door, which came to a point like the upper half of a diamond, and gave the boat a stout push. Something seemed to hold her back, and Fred looked to see what it was. She was apparently clear, for when he pulled the boat inward a couple of feet she moved easily enough. He gave her another shove, harder than before, when she floated clear with a jerk. "I wonder what was the matter," he thought as he jumped aboard and busied himself hoisting the sail. The catboat darted off beautifully under the influence of a smacking breeze, and under the exhilaration of the moment he forgot all about the matter. "It's a delightful afternoon, isn't it?" remarked Annie as Fred took a seat beside her and grasped the tiller. "Couldn't be better if it had been made to order especially for us," he replied, heading the boat down the river. How Moses and his accomplice Mickey would have grinned if they could have seen the young couple start on their fateful cruise. But Moses couldn't leave the store, nor Mickey the mine at that hour of the day. The boat leaned to the influence of the wind, exposing a foot or so of her copper sheathing, which flashed back the rays of the afternoon sunshine. "Father said this morning that you told him you had a big offer for that pony of yours," said Annie from under her white sunshade. "That's right, $3,000. "Oh, my! Are you going to sell him? He's just the sweetest, dearest thing I ever saw," she continued enthusiastically. "No, I don't think I will, at least not for that money." "Is he worth more?" "His sire's Theodolite, who once won the Brooklyn Handicap and I don't know how many other events. He ought to turn out a winner. I consider $5,000 nearer his figure." My, said Annie. "You'll be a rich man some day." "I mean to be, if I can get the money honestly." "I'm sure you won't try to make it any other way," she answered earnestly. "Thank you, Annie, for your good opinion of me," he said, much pleased. "You're welcome," laughed the girl roguishly. They were now out in the middle of the river, sailing free before a stiff breeze. Yet Fred thought the boat was moving sluggishly for her, and so she was, but the boy, of course, never once suspected the cause. Had he glanced into the cabin, the truth would have instantly become apparent, for it was now half full of water and rising higher every moment. But he had no occasion to do that, and so the boy and girl, chatting gaily, went on unconscious of the imminent danger facing them. "What do you expect to do with your little farm?" asked Annie. "Maybe I'll live there one of these days when I get married," he answered laughingly. Their eyes met. Annie dropped hers and blushed. Why? She could hardly have answered that question herself. Perhaps there was something in Fred's eyes which she read aright. We can't say. You know this is a great coal region, she said half-questioningly. Well, I ought to. I've lived here long enough, while during the past year I've seen a good deal of the country with Mr. Wesley. Did it ever occur to you that way down somewhere, maybe hundreds of feet under the soil of your farm, there might be coal? What? Ejaculated the boy in surprise. Father was speaking about it the other night. Fred made no reply. The mere possibility of such a thing struck him dumb. Smart, bright boy as he was, he had never thought of the matter before. Yet such a thing was by no means an improbability. Clover Farm was in the very heart, you might say, of the Wyoming Valley coal region. You say your father suggested the idea? Asked Fred at length. Yes. I hardly dare hope for such a thing, he said, his voice trembling with suppressed excitement. Why, if coal was found on my ground, it would make me a rich man, or boy, rather. That's what Father said. He intended to mention the matter to you. I mean to speak to Mr. Wesley about it. I would if I was you. They were nearing a small wooded island at that moment. Some bright flowers growing upon it attracted Annie's attention. She was wonderingly fond of wild flowers. Do you think we could stop there a few minutes? She asked eagerly. I do love flowers, and I like— You'd like a sample of those yonder, eh? He said mischievously. I would indeed. Then you shall have them. To wish for anything is equivalent to a command for me, said Fred, heading the boat toward shore. Was it the hand of Providence which was suddenly stretched out in their behalf? Aren't you good? She cried with a look which made him very happy. The boat grounded heavily on the little strip of shingle. Fred ran forward, leapt ashore, and secured the catboat by her painter to a small tree. Then he assisted Annie to land together, and they walked slowly toward where the flowers were growing, all in their wild luxuriance. Suddenly, as they made their way through the bushes, a man, wild-looking and villainous, rose in front of them and barred their way. He was clad almost in rags, and the famished glare in his eyes put one in mind of a starved hyena. Annie screamed and started back in fear. Fred stopped in front of her, calm and fearless, ready to protect her at any cost. A keen glance at the stranger convinced Fred he had seen that face before, dirty as it was and disguised by unkempt growth of beard. It was the face of a man he supposed was at the moment doing time in the faraway penitentiary of the state. In other words, it was Jake Wise. Fred was so surprised that he could not find words with which to address this escaped prison bird. No word or hint had reached the little mining village that Jake was at liberty. The discovery came like a shock to the boy. It's you, Fred King. You, to whom I owe so much. You, whom I swore to kill when I got out of the place your infernal evidence sent me to. And now I've got you within reach, and I'll carry out my oath if I swing for it. Yes, I mean to kill you here and now. With a scream of fury, he rushed on Fred and grappled with him. Stout and brawny as the boy was, and nervy to the backbone, he suddenly felt like a child in the infuriated man's grasp. They went down on the earth, Wise on top, his hand searching for a knife he had, and against which Fred could not defend himself. Annie looked on frozen to the spot with terror. She saw Jake draw the glittering weapon and raise his arm to drive it home into the boy's breast, and the sight broke the spell which held her. With a cry, she suddenly picked up a stone at her feet and dashed it at Jake's head. It took effect and staggered him. The knife dropped from his hand. At the same time, Fred gave a mighty heave and threw off the villain. Before he could get up, however, Wise staggered to his feet, looked about in a dazed sort of way, and then rushed off down to the beach where the catboat lay. He tore the painter loose, pushed the boat off, and leapt on board. Then, as the craft gathered headway, he seized the tiller and headed the boat down the river. End of chapter 14.